Hey, I'm Jeff Reber with Pursuit Real Estate, here today with a good friend and practicing attorney since 2016, James Klempin of McCabe Law. He is with a firm that's focused on real estate law and title. And so we've worked together before, and we're talking about a topic today that is near and dear to my heart, given that I'm a real estate brokerage, which is agency relationships and the difference between single agency and transaction brokerage. Let's jump right in. Give me sort of top level, what does each mean? What are the differences? And then how do you practically see those play out in your world on a weekly basis?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically you have your three main types of agencies is kind of what we're dealing with. You have your transaction broker, your single agent, and then of course a no broker relationship. I think there's a lot of confusion that I see, not only from individuals who are seeking to obtain a real estate agent for the very first time, or even from real estate agents in the community as well, as trying to find the differences between the two. It's not really talked about or discussed as much as I think it should be, or clarified. So I think this is great, Jeff. Thanks again for letting me come in and kind of chat about this quickly. Sure. So let's start with the transaction broker. So in Florida, how it works is if there is no disclosure provided and no one makes any mention of it, you have a transaction broker. The best case of that is if you have a real estate agent currently and you've never heard this conversation or those words, you're probably in a transaction broker relationship.
Yep.
Florida does not require a disclosure of that. And then the other agency relationship is the single agent relationship. There's a key difference between the two, and I can break it down to very simple, is there's duties for each, the transaction broker that they're required to follow per Florida statutes, and the single agent. And the single agent has a heightened duty. So they have a heightened level of care that they're required to provide their clients, where the transaction broker, in essence, their main job is to see the transaction through from beginning to end and ensure that transaction takes place.
So is there any, just real quick question, from your perspective, is there any reason for a client, seller or buyer, to desire, to want a transaction broker relationship? Like why would anybody want that?
Well, Jeff, let me answer that with a question. A lot of times when I ask individuals what kind of agent they want, I ask them one question. Do you prefer an agent that has your best interest at heart and is fighting for your side, or an agent that's just going to be there to see the transaction through? I would say majority of individuals would answer to the first part, saying they want an agent who's advocating for their best interest, which would be the single agent relationship. To answer your question further, I don't, to each their own, I don't really see a true benefit in having a transaction broker. If anything, the main benefit would be a single agent relationship, because of the heightened duty they're required to provide to you. So I would always recommend to any owner or buyer, seller, friend, family member who's looking for an agent for the first time is, to make sure you ask that agent, are you a transaction broker in this case, or is this going to be a single agent relationship?
Sure.
And I'll give you a good example of that. Let's say an individual enters into a negotiation process, which we all know gives many of us gray hair. We're pulling our teeth out, trying to go back and forth and get this deal done. This amount, well, you throw in the washer, we're going to take it, right? If you have a transaction broker and let's say they find out the seller's actually willing to take 20 or 30,000 less than the asking price, that transaction broker doesn't have a duty to disclose that to you because of the way the confidentiality duty works in the single agent versus the transaction relationship. Yep. Additionally, there's a duty of loyalty that is not there in the transaction broker that is there in the single agent. Mm-hmm. So that agent doesn't necessarily have to advocate or have your best interest. I've been told, or go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was just going to say, you actually, I'll give you credit, created the metaphor or the parallel from, what was it, referee versus coach, and maybe you swipe that from somewhere else. Either way, I'm giving you credit in all future examples that I give that make that same compare contrast. And so, yeah, I'll let you go into that for a second, but give us that difference or how you explained it to me that way.
And I did. I heard it from another individual, so I won't take full credit for it, but I remembered it. So that means something.
That's important. Yeah,
that's right.
It is.
So the analogy that I really enjoy sharing with people, because I think it clears up for everybody, is I look at, from a sports perspective, the coach versus the referee, let's say in a football game. So, for example, we're at a Jaguars game. You have the referees who are there to ensure the rules are followed. They're going to call offside penalties, but just mainly the strict rules of the game. But they have no desire if the Jaguars win or lose. They could care less one way or the other.
Hopefully they don't. We've had some referee scandals in the past, but
right. Yes, hopefully
all other things being equal, they have no interest in who wins. That's right.
That's right. You would hope so. Yeah. Things happen, but no. So the points of the referees just kind of be there, ensure the game takes place. It has a beginning point and it ends, and at the end of the day, the referee gets their check and they walk away and they're happy the game's over. Right. So I look at that as the transaction broker relationship.
That's right.
The single agent relationship is more like the coach. Where the coach comes in, he has a strong vested interest in one side. He works really hard with practices and reviewing tape and film and doing research and taking as many steps as he can to ensure that team is going to be strong and ready to compete. Whether it takes, the Jags, whether it takes 1 year to get good or it takes a few years to get good, right? They're there and they're going to be committed to the process.
Yeah.
And of course, they have a very strong vested interest in their side winning and achieving and getting the best possible result. So I always, from a sports analysis, it's pretty clear on who you would want if you were the player to be advocating for you. Would it be the referee or the coach? And I think it's clear it's always the coach, the individual that has that duty of loyalty, the duty of obedience, and the duty of confidentiality to you itself. Those are very strong tools that a transaction broker would not possess.
Yep. No, that's great. And I always struggled to put into words in a simple, understandable, concise way the difference between single agency and transaction brokerage. And when you had told me that the first time, I was like, that's brilliant. That actually makes perfect sense and is way better than any way that I've tried to describe it previously. So
that's right.
No, that's good stuff. Well, any other, I don't know, real life examples, stories, recent occurrences that would sort of play into the conversation that we're having?
Yeah, I think, and again, I'd like to really press upon more so just the buyers and sellers at this point to really take the time to look at who you're getting to represent you in the deal, look at the agency you're working with, look at the brokerage you're working with. Again, because the transaction broker is not required to disclose that, a lot of things, what you see is you'll come in, you'll meet an agent, they're super flashy. They come in, you make you smile and laugh and get you to sign this paper, and then you're off to the races, right?
Sure.
But you really want to make sure you ask those questions, because they make a huge impact on whether you're going to sell for, whether they're going to do what they can to make sure that you get your best interest at heart.
Yep.
And so I really always try to tell individuals, make sure you ask, are you a transaction broker? Are you going to be a single agent? And they know exactly what that is when you ask them. So you may see their face change because they don't want you to know that. But that's something that you do want to ask is, am I going to be working with a single agent relationship?
Yep. And is it fair to draw a comparison to the investment world where the term fiduciary is used to describe someone that's working on your behalf versus someone who's just pressing buy or pressing sell on a trade or whatever the case may be? Is that a decent comparison?
It is. And that's why there's another kind of relationship called a dual relationship, which in Florida you can't have. And one of the reasons for that is because of, in a dual relationship, you would have a fiduciary to two parties, which is not possible, right? And so that's when the transaction broker, you can still represent buyer and seller, but there's no fiduciary relationship, which is those heightened things we talked about.
It would be the equivalent of allowing the coach to also be the referee. It's like,
right.
I would love to be the coach of the team and be the referee, but I don't think anybody else is going to think that's
right. You'd have a good idea.
Team is going to think that's fair. Yeah.
Right. You'd have a good idea who's going to win.
That's exactly right. Well, this is great. Anything else to add to the mix for anyone who's, again, thinking about buying or selling and curious as to what this whole agency relationship thing is about?
Again, no, just making sure that you ask your agent that you're potentially looking at, and that how important it really is to spend time and think about who you're going to work with because of the impact that agent could have on if you're selling, the impact they could have on the how much you receive, or if you're buying, the impact on what kind of deal they could work out for your side. So having that conversation, sitting down, figuring out the kind of agency relationship that they're going to be able to provide to you so that you can have their best or your best interest at their heart.
Absolutely. And then if people want to follow up with you for any questions, whether they be real estate law related, title related, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, of course. I'm always happy to help and answer any questions I have. You know, we love working with real estate, love answering questions about real estate. Phone number is 904-302-5707.
Cool.
And then my email is jklempin@flcalegal.com. So either one of those would work great and get you right to me.
There it is. And if anybody needs me, 904-405-1995 or jeff@pursuitrealestate.com. James, this has been great. Thank you so much for the time and expertise and insight, and ultimately the metaphor that I could never come up with on my own the last 16 years of being a real estate brokerage. So thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Thanks so much.